Welcome to the lecture on human rights, sexual and reproductive rights, social justice, and maternal and child health. One approach to studying maternal and child health is to review a series of topics in terms of data, trends, and interventions to improve MCH. But that leaves us ungrounded in a lot of ways and without any theoretical grounding or lenses through which we can more deeply understand the issues that we'll discuss throughout the semester. One of the lenses through which we need to view MCH is a rights lens, and that means human rights, sexual and reproductive rights, and social justice. In today's presentation, I want to offer the core elements of this lens and then discuss and have you discuss why and how rights is so important to an understanding of MCH overall, as well as how we propose and structure policies and programs that ultimately aim to improve MCH. As with any of these presentations, we'll be scratching the surface, and to go deeper, you'll need to access the syllabus links, read the articles and content of different core websites that I give to you, and others that you discover, and then use this lens in your writing. I just want to say that this is a content-heavy presentation, and I encourage you to return to it throughout the course. When we talk about human rights, we talk about them being universal, inalienable, interdependent, and indivisible. But first I want to start off with, what are human rights? What are we talking about here? Human rights are rights that are inherent to all human beings, whatever our nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, sexual orientation, or any other status. We're all equally entitled to our human rights without discrimination, and these rights are all interrelated, interdependent, and indivisible. The website noted on the slide offers a really good summary, and I'm taking a lot of the text from that particular website. The idea that human rights are universal means that, which really lies at the cornerstone of international human rights law. It's a principle that was first emphasized in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights in 1948, and it's been reiterated in numerous conventions, declarations, and resolutions. And it really notes that it's the duty of states or governments to promote and protect all human rights and fundamental freedoms, regardless of their political, economic, and cultural systems. That human rights are inalienable means that they're natural, they're given for all human beings. They should not be taken away except in specific situations and according to due process. They're interdependent and indivisible. Whether they're civil and political rights, such as the right to life, equality before the law, freedom of expression, whether they're economic, social, and cultural rights, such as the rights to work, Social Security, and education, or collective rights, such as the rights to development and self-determination. They're indivisible, interrelated, and interdependent. That means the improvement of one facilitates the advancement of the others, and the deprivation of one adversely affects the others. One of the core documents that we'll be looking at, and that I really encourage you, if you haven't seen it already, you need to take a look at this, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1948. And since then, efforts to put it into practice have taken place throughout the world. Throughout the course, we'll refer back to this core document to categorize problems and efforts to address issues within the framework of this and other documents. And below is a link. Please read it and use it throughout the course. One example from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. And I want you to think, what are some MCH issues that could be linked to Article 5? And if you want to write about these in the discussion board, that would be great. One of the key creators of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was Rene Cassin. And I want to take you through a sort of drawing, a graphic that he developed called Cassin's Portico, to really demonstrate how the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is constructed or is structured. René Cassin lived from 1887 to 1976, and he was a member of the Commission on Human Rights and served on the Commission's drafting committee. His involvement in drafting the Universal Declaration and his other human rights work led him to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in 1968. And what he did was compared the structure of the Declaration to a portico, and the image has been frequently used to illustrate the different elements of the Declaration. With the preamble, the base of the portico, where the preamble is the preamble, where dignity, liberty, equality, and solidarity, originally framed as brotherhood, provide the solid grounding for all human rights. And here I highlight dignity since it's often not brought into discussion about human rights, believe it or not. And we're going to draw on this concept throughout the course. The dignity of the human person is not only a fundamental right in itself, but constitutes the real basis of fundamental rights. And in the preamble, it says, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. The portico then has its first level, which are the rights, or illustrated through columns. And in this and the following slides, I summarize what those columns include. Like columns on a portico, they provide height and depth to the Declaration and then comprise its core content. So Articles 3 through 11 focus on life, liberty, and personal security. Articles 12 through 17 look at civil society. Articles 18 through 21, polity. And Articles 22 through 27 focus on economic, social, and cultural rights. The cap, the roof of the portico, Articles 29 through 30, outline duties, limits, and order. And what this all says is the state or the government must create an enabling environment for the exercise of rights. That is, it must create laws and policies that enable people to exercise our rights. Universal human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law in the forms of treaties, customary international law, general principles, and other sources of international law, which we'll see throughout the class. And these laws lay down obligations of government to act in certain ways or to refrain from acting in certain ways in order to promote and protect human rights and the fundamental freedoms of all individuals and groups. All states in the world have ratified at least one of the core human rights treaties, and 80% of states in the world have ratified 4 or more, which then reflects consent of these states to create legal obligations. Okay, I want to now pass into the issue of sexual and reproductive health and rights, and as specific to human rights, to maternal and child health. In the following slides, there's a lot of text, and I'm not going to read the text. I want you to take your time reading through the text, but it's really important for us all to understand the terminology, which is why I put the full definitions in here. I want to start with sexual health. In your notes, in the PowerPoint, there is a link to the World Health Organization, which is where this definition comes from. And I want to highlight, when we talk about sexual health, as when we talk about reproductive health, that the focus is on health, not just the absence of disease. There's a focus on safety, there's a focus on pleasure, which can be quite controversial, and there's a focus on being free from violence, coercion, and discrimination. And if we go back to thinking about Article 5 in the Declaration, you can start to see some links there. Sexual rights embrace human rights that are already recognized in national laws. international human rights documents, and other consensus statements. They include the right of all individuals to be free from coercion, discrimination, and violence, to attain the highest attainable standard of sexual health, including access to sexual and reproductive health services, to seek, receive, and impart information related to sexuality education, to have respect for bodily integrity, to choose their partner, to decide whether or not to be sexually active, to engage in consensual sexual relations and consensual marriage. So the whole issue of child marriage, for example, comes into the realm of sexual health, to decide whether or not and when to have children, to pursue a satisfying, safe, and pleasurable sexual life. And it's the responsible exercise of human rights requires that all individuals respect the rights of others. As I noted, I'm not going to read through this long definition, but I want you to, and I want you to really understand it. There's a link in your notes to, once again, the World Health Organization site where the definition appears. And I just want to emphasize that reproductive health and rights are similar to sexual health and rights in terms of the focus on physical and mental health, as well as social well-being, safety, and satisfaction. And key to reproductive health and rights is the ability or capacity to decide if, when, and how often to have children. So again, the definition continues on this slide. So when we talk about a rights-based approach, we recognize that every human being is recognized both as a person and as a right holder. A rights-based approach strives to secure the freedom, well-being, and dignity of all people everywhere within a framework of essential standards and principles, duties, and obligations. And the rights-based approach supports mechanisms to ensure that entitlements are attained and safeguarded. This graphic I find very useful. It comes from the United Nations, the UNFPA website, and it really illustrates how there's a reciprocal relationship between rights holders, us as people, or rights and duty bearers, the state, really, states or governments. So human rights entail both rights and obligations. States assume obligations and duties under international law to respect and protect and fulfill human rights. The obligation to respect means that states must refrain from interfering with or curtailing the enjoyment of human rights. The obligation to protect requires states to protect individuals and groups against human rights abuses. And the obligation to fulfill means that states must take positive action to facilitate people's enjoyment of basic human rights. At the individual level, or the rights holder level, we're entitled to our human rights, and we should also respect the human rights of others. So here, in this course, we're going to focus on needs, but needs are not the same as rights, and that's what I'm trying to get at in this slide. When we focus on the needs of people, we know that a need that's not fulfilled leads to dissatisfaction, but a right that's not respected and fulfilled leads to a real violation, and its redress or reparation can be legally and legitimately claimed. So one is sort of put your complaint into the complaint box. The other is I have got legal mechanisms through which I can gain reparations and recognition that my rights were violated. A human rights approach to programming really differs from the basic needs approach in that it recognizes the existence of rights. It also reinforces the capacities of duty bearers to respect, protect, and guarantee these rights. And here we see that there are 3 levels of obligation, which I've already talked about: to respect, to protect, and to fulfill. So you can take a look at this. It's all written out here. in more detail. So, in sum, the ways in which social justice and human rights link to maternal and child health include the recognition that maternal and child health issues are human rights and social justice issues, that there is a role for the government or the public sector in partnership with the private sector. And when that happens, we see human rights and social justice being respected in certain ways, and when that does not happen, we see it playing out in other ways. We recognize that there's a social, economic, and political impact of inequities on maternal child health. And it forces us to ask questions about how we reduce or eliminate these inequities. And that ultimately has implications for how we design our programs and policies. So I encourage all of you to take a look and really start reading in depth the various links I have provided on Blackboard and in this presentation, and ask you to read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I feel like everyone should walk around with a pocket copy of that declaration. It is absolutely key to what we will be doing throughout this course. Thank you, and email me with any questions, and I look forward to reading your discussion board responses this week. Thank you.